This is Changemakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
Welcome back to my conversation with ChangeMaker Anne Venezia, the Housing Director of Arlington County in Virginia. And most of the changemakers that we've had on the podcast, they have talked about the tension of creating affordable housing and preserving it at the same time. How has Arlington County balanced each of these issues?
I would say it's a tension in Arlington as well. It's something that we really struggle with. 10 years ago, 10 years plus, when I started with the county, there was a lot of focus on growing the existing portfolio. So how can we add more and more units so that we have greater affordability preserved for more households? And I would say fast forwarding to today, given the fact that our portfolio is increasingly aging, we have, everything is 10 years older than it was, back 10 years ago. And so we have this increased pressure to really make sure that we're also maintaining the units that are already in the portfolio. And so we are working on what we're calling a capital needs assessment and inventory of our aging portfolio that is really going to be a focus for staff in fiscal year 22. And so, of those 8,000 units that I mentioned, 8,000 plus, that represents almost 50 rental properties in the multifamily portfolio. And so while some of those have been newly constructed, again, in the last 10, 15 years, the vast majority represent older garden style housing stock and, properties that may need some more capital investment. Again, in the era of let's acquire properties so that we can grow the portfolio and preserve more units, we did help owners acquire older properties that were acquired with little or no rehab at the time of acquisition. So again, it was a great preservation opportunity, but these same properties now face aging buildings and systems, which impact ongoing maintenance and operating budgets. And so while you can use replacement reserves or other property accounts for some of the larger or more costly repairs, some of those repairs are cost prohibitive and really do need additional resources in order to bring new life to the properties. So again, that is definitely a focus in fiscal year 22, and I think will continue to be for the years to come. And it's just bringing that in balance with the new units we're trying to bring online as well.
Some other communities may argue that they don't have the ability to put together this kind of creative financing. Maybe they don't have the tax base, or, they don't have, $16 million that their council will approve. But you guys have done more than just package financing. You've mentioned the capital needs assessment. You've mentioned your comprehensive plan for visioning out several years. And you guys have also done some unique ordinance. Tell us more about how that is working.
Sure. And so a lot of that work most recently has been under our Housing Arlington umbrella. So Housing Arlington was kicked off by the county board in 2019, really to try to introduce new approaches to meeting our supply goal under the Affordable Housing Master Plan. So recognizing, yes, we have tools like AHIF that we've used for many years. They've worked pretty well, but we're still not meeting all the need in the community. And so really trying to expand our approaches and explore new and different solutions so that we can address these broader challenges. And so again, under that umbrella, we have looked at some ordinance changes, and we're continuing to look at more. But just to highlight a few, we have our accessory dwellings. And so again, in 2019, that was the zoning ordinance amendment was put in place to allow for additional flexibility for standalone accessory dwelling structures on single family lots specifically. And so again, just trying to make that use more enabled. We also introduced a zoning ordinance amendment for bonus density. And so specifically, this amendment allows for uncapped density within existing height limits in order to provide additional opportunities for contributions to affordable housing and other community goals. So as long as you're staying within that envelope, you can have additional density if you're bringing additional community benefits, such as affordable housing, to Arlington. And then we also have one for senior housing. And so again, an ordinance amendment that allows for senior-focused housing as a use in some of our multifamily and mixed-use zoning districts. It seems like sort of a straightforward thing, but prior to the zoning ordinance amendment, that use was more limited. And so we wanted to, again, enable that opportunity for more housing for our senior community. So again, just some examples of some of the ordinance amendments that we've brought forward under Housing Arlington in the last couple of years.
So I'm sure that if anybody is interested in finding some of this ordinance creativity, that I'm sure all of those ordinances are on your website. Or is there something specific, some kind of specific housing area that they would need to go to best practice example for this?
Yes, there are a couple places on our website where folks can learn more about our zoning ordinance amendments. Again, many of these, the more recent ones that are related to housing, you can link to them from our Housing Arlington webpage. And so that is one way to get there. We also do have a dedicated section on the county website for zoning ordinance amendments. And so that's another way really to look at all of the amendments that have been introduced in the last couple of years.
So talk to us now about another housing initiative or a study that you guys are working on. It's called the Missing Middle Housing Study.
Sure, yes. And so our Missing Middle Housing Study is exploring how new housing types, so it could be townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, and other types of, we'll say, less traditional uses in Arlington, how those could help address our shortfall in housing supply and also really gaps in housing choices by being allowed in more areas of Arlington. And so this Missing Middle Housing Study, it officially kicked off in October 2020. And leading up to that, we released a series of research compendium or a series of papers within a research compendium last summer. And that research compendium, it's a 5-part series that, again, was released in the months leading up to the study's start. And we also, throughout this phase 1, which again started in October 2020, we have invited what has ended up being hundreds of stakeholders because we were in a virtual environment. So to participate in a series of community engagements. And so really trying to provide multiple avenues to get as broad of ideas as possible and also to hear any concerns from the community to help build a shared understanding of what problem we're trying to solve and help inform next steps for the study. And so that's kind of what we're concluding now is this phase 1, where it's the problem definition, it's the, are we looking at everything we need to look at? Are we too narrow? Are we too broad? Really, again, trying to define that scope of the study. And so we're working on a phase 1 report now, which we're hoping to share with the community and the county board later this fall.
So what does the name mean? Is it a geographic reference or an income or just a gap analysis?
So a missing middle really is referring to housing types. In Arlington specifically, there are lots of options if someone is looking for a large, we'll say 3,000 square foot plus single family home. And we also have a pretty good variety of units that are multifamily rental. And so the missing middle term itself is referring to all the different housing types that lie in between. So again, it could be a townhouse, it could be a duplex, could be a triplex, could be a quadplex. There are examples we're seeing from other communities around the country where depending on where it's located, whether it's in an existing single family neighborhood, whether it's more a neighbor, for instance, to a large scale multifamily rental, what type might be appropriate in order to provide just different choices.
We talked on another podcast with another ChangeMaker guest about transit and the importance of transit, in proximity to where affordable housing is or isn't. So what are you seeing for Arlington County in regards to transit and affordable housing? Is that a requirement for you guys? Is that just an obstacle, or how are those two concepts interacting?
So transit-oriented development has always been a really high priority for Arlington. And when you look at our map of the county and where the higher density development lies, it really is along our primary transit corridors. And so whether that be, in our case, the Metro train, And so we have, the orange and blue line, we have the yellow line, so really seeing a lot of higher density development along those metro corridors is what we call them. But then we also have some areas that have a lot of bus routes and more local transportation as well. And so Columbia Pike is an example of that, where again, we see higher density development in that transit corridor. So historically, I would say that has been our orientation, is to try to cluster a lot of those uses, and specifically for affordable housing on the rental side, that has followed that same historic pattern. And so I think going back to the missing middle idea, we're looking to see, does that development pattern still make sense? Do we want to try to move beyond those transit corridors and provide additional housing types and opportunities? Or do we want to stay the course and continue to concentrate a lot of the affordability and the density and everything, again, along those traditional transit routes? So that's one of the questions that we're looking at.
How is the community going to react? Are they going to be able to be content with the study through the engagement process? Or, when is the study done? How are you guys going to measure that this has been a successful process, either with the master plan or with all of these various other planning corridor studies?
As with any of these major planning studies, there's a range of views. We have members of the community who are very excited that we're looking at this, sort of it's about time. Why didn't we look at this sooner? And then there are members of the community who, are less comfortable with the idea of bringing about changes and maybe introducing, again, new housing types and things like that in areas that maybe haven't seen those before. So I would say one thing we are really committed to is making sure we're hearing from as many people as possible and really trying to take those viewpoints into consideration so that when we come back with a recommendation to our county board, it maybe won't be something that everyone agrees with, but at least they'll feel heard, and at least they'll feel that they were part of the process and they had an opportunity to weigh in. So I think that is what we would consider to be success in that scenario, is for all the relevant parties to feel that they were included and engaged and part of the process.
So we've covered a lot of different initiatives that you guys are working on, both from the planning, the study to new development. Are there any other project examples that you want to highlight for our listeners?
Sure. Yes, we have a couple projects that are coming forward that I think really show, again, that creativity and partnership. Projects that really the county alone would not be able to do without one or more community partners saying, we really want to help the cause. We really want to see how we can bring greater affordability to the community. And so one of those examples is the Terwilliger Place, also known as American Legion Project in Arlington. The background on that one is the American Legion site along Washington Boulevard in North Arlington was really an aging facility, and they were experiencing diminishing membership. And so members of the American Legion Post 139, they saw redevelopment as an opportunity to really transform their site and also bring about greater programming and services for the community in that area. And so in 2016, APA was selected to partner and lead the redevelopment with this American Legion post. And then the county was brought in as well to provide some additional resources in order to make the project feasible. And so this affordable housing developer, APA, they led the project through a special GLUP study plus process. The project site plan, along with $14 million in Arlington County local funds, were approved in February 2019. And it's only just a few blocks from the Virginia Square metro station, which also makes it, again, transit-oriented development. It's very close to that main metro corridor. And so as a result of the redevelopment, which is in process now, they're looking to create 160 units of affordable housing, when that includes a new ground floor area for the original American Legion post. So they'll still retain space as well. And of the 160 units, 50% of those will have a veterans preference, which is really special for Arlington because this is one of the first projects, if not the only project, to have that specific preference. And so it really will provide some critical housing and also resources to support the needs of veterans in the Arlington community. And we also are going to be providing a lot of family-sized units in the building. So 2/3 of the units will have 2 or 3 bedrooms to help meet the needs of families. And there's also going to be a broad income mix there. So there's going to be units that serve households with incomes ranging between 30% of the area median income and 80% of the area median income. So again, really trying to reach to the deeper affordability all the way up to more middle income housing or moderate income housing. So that is something that, again, is under construction now, and we're looking for those units to be delivered in the fall of 2022. But I did want to highlight it because, again, it's an example of a really unique partnership that came forward that allowed an underutilized site to be redeveloped to bring about more community services for the area.
Who was the initiator for that particular project?
It came about from a couple different places, but really it was the American Legion Post that came forward and said, we really want to do something bigger and more with this site. And the building needed some reinvestment as well. So I think they saw, there was a large surface parking lot. They saw that there was more opportunity with that site in a really key prime area, so close to transit, that they could really do some more than just renovate their building. So really giving credit to them for having that vision and starting to reach out to the county and, again, this other affordable housing developer to say, what could we do? What's the vision here? And how can we bring about something bigger and more to help meet, again, the needs of the broader community?
Well, I believe that this has covered such a glimpse of what is going on in Arlington County. And you guys have a lot of work to do, but you guys are chipping away at it. So I appreciate your time. And it's been a pleasure to have you on this podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And yes, we're always looking for new ideas ourselves. So I will definitely tune in to hear from some of your other guests to see if they can give us more ideas, more tools for our toolbox.
Thanks for listening to Changemakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.